All righty. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of maintaining and adding value to your home. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation. And on behalf of the A Month of Service collaboration, I want to welcome you all and thank you all for joining us and either returning or joining us for the first time for our presentation. I just want to kind of real quick give you a little history or a little rundown and introduce who all of our partners are. With the month of service, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, Lone Star Legal Aid, the Earl Carl Institute, Harris County Attorney's Office, Texas Legal Services Center, Harris Central Appraisal District, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And together we make up a month of service. And basically, a month of service is the collaboration of all nine of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis, offering a variety of different workshops and resources and information to the communities that we all serve relative to asset building, asset protection, and the maintaining of generational wealth. We decided several years ago to collaborate and pool a lot of our initiatives and our programs in an effort to try to create a larger impact and get more information out to those communities that we serve, because we know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that don't know where to go for particular resources, that don't know where to go for particular services, and basically kind of what's available to them. So again, we wanted to pool that and make sure that we try to get as much information, much accurate and up-to-date information out there as possible. We know that a lot of folks rely on social media and those TikTok experts and things that kind of put stuff out there that are not necessarily relative to what's happening in our community, as opposed to just kind of a blanket statement about a lot of things uh, that don't necessarily pertain to us in our area, our region. And things like home maintenance are important, but it's also according to the region that you actually stay in. So certain tips that you would do for, a place that's in New York or in California is not relative to the weather pattern and the conditions that we have here in Texas. So we want to make sure that you guys are doing and receiving the information about maintaining your home, what can actually add value to your home if you're in the area, or if you're looking into renovations and updates and upgrade. But as a homeowner, what can preserve, what can help with the simple maintenance that can help with the longevity of your property and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that we have area experts in the field where in their profession that can give you this information. So we have presenters today. We have Mr. Clifford Joe with GI Inspections, who will be joining us in just a little bit. And we also have Ms. Nikki Collins with Keys Real Estate Services, who is a licensed appraiser, who's going to be providing a great deal of information for you guys. So this is your opportunity to ask questions of these particular experts, relative to, home maintenance tips and renovations and things like that, market value versus appraised value and tax, how those upgrades and things like that can also impact your property taxes and, how that's all appraised and whatnot. So, but we'll get into a lot of those details in just a moment. So feel free to type your question into the comment section. Do know that we record the session. We do also broadcast live on our social media platforms, through YouTube, and then share on all of our other stations. So if you are joining us on YouTube or any of the other social media sites, I am monitoring those as well. So you can feel free to type your questions into the comment, and I'll make sure that it gets read aloud for you at the end as well. So do know, keep in mind, again, we do broadcast, we do record, so we want to try to protect your privacy as best as we possibly can. So we ask that you don't divulge any personal detailed information about your particular home, like giving us your address or where you live and things like that. So we don't want that to kind of get out there all over the what do you call it? It's not the universe. What do they call the cyber world, cyber community? For everybody to have access to. So do keep that in mind. But again, we do encourage you to reach out to our presenting partners. Their contact information will be provided for you if you want some more personal detail or one-on-one, or have some other specific questions about your particular uh, issue that you'd like to have them addressed on a one-on-one basis. But try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can. So do keep that in mind. Also, information that does get presented here today and throughout all of our presentations are for educational purposes only. And again, we want to make sure that we try to get the most up-to-date and accurate information out there as we possibly can. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and have Miss Nikki Collins introduce herself. And again, Mr. Clifford Joe will be joining us in just a little bit, and we're going to get started. So thank you all again for joining us, and hope everything is well with all of you guys. And we're going to get started. So Miss Nikki Collins.
Hi, I'm trying to pull up. There we go. My name is Nikki Collins, and I am a second generation real estate professional. My mom is a real estate appraiser and broker, and I'm a real estate appraiser and sales agent. My background was initially IT, came out of school, and that bubble burst. And so I had to figure out how was I going to pivot? And I had sworn my entire life that I would never do real estate, largely because my mother did, and I just didn't, childhood rebellion. And went and got my real estate master's from Texas A&M, and I have been a real estate professional now for more than 20 years. And surprise, surprise, I really love what I do. Um, I think the thing that I love most is the opportunity to help others accomplish either the goal they knew they had or the goal they didn't know they could accomplish. And so, we've always said in America, and I guess all over the world, that because land is the only commodity where it is unique, it is individual, it is the only one of its kind in the world, it is the most direct way to generational wealth. And so we are interested in getting the information that communities that may not have access to what how the different pieces of the real estate. You see real estate agents, you see even bankers and lenders, but very seldom do you have an opportunity to speak to appraisers. I doubt I would have known what one was if it were not for my mom. And so we make a lot of decisions about our homes and properties that we own that if you had had a chance to talk to an appraiser, you might have done something different. So let's get into it. The question that you ask with anything that is going to function as an investment, be it land, be it investing in a business, no matter what it is, the question is, what is the return? And so we're going to look at ROI. We're going to look at the difference between cost and value. We're going to talk about the difference between pecuniary value and personal value. And that's going to become I typically tell homeowners that. So, are you looking with dollars or looking with your heart? So, we'll get into what those two different things mean. So, what is return on investment? Return on investment measures the profit you have made or could have made on an investment. So, how do we make this simplified? Um, I have a widget, and the widget costs me $1 to make. I am able to sell this widget in the open market for $1.20. That's a 20% return on investment. I put 100 in, I got 120 out. 20 is in it. It's always easier if I use $1 because that 100 makes it real easy to get those percentages. So that's a 20% return on investment. I can feel good about that. I really feel like my money worked in my favor if I sell, five of these, and for the $5 I spent, I get a whole dollar back. I really feel like I made a good investment. So, in that illustration, we also had an opportunity to see the difference between cost and value. Cost and value is an area where a lot of owners get, for lack of a better phrase, their feelings hurt because you'll have a seller and the seller will be angry with the appraiser. I have an appraisal right now that I need to go and I guess just expound further on this particular issue because the seller was saying, you appraise the property for this, but I put in new windows and I put on a roof and I put in, a new dishwasher. And surely that should mean, I spent X amount of dollars. So that should have increased my value also by X amount of dollars. That's not necessarily true. Oftentimes you will see what we saw in in the previous example, that we spent a dollar, that was the cost, that we were able to sell it for $1.20. That was the value on the open market. Because how you feel about what you spent makes no difference when we are comparing what's happening with money in the open market. And when you sell a property, when you buy a property, what you want to make sure of is that that price point makes sense in the open market, particularly on the buyer side. The seller does not mind you paying a lot more than what you should. And, the buyer doesn't mind paying a lot less, which is why you want to make both parties should be really sure that they understand this cost versus value issue. Now, when we're looking at value, we mentioned briefly two different types of value. One was pecuniary and one was personal. Let's talk about the difference between those. Pecuniary, very easy to measure. It is dollars and cents. I made this for a dollar. I sold it for $1.20. The value to me was 20 cents. That's super easy. Personal value, however, is qualitative, not quantitative. And it is typically it's the ooey gooey value of a thing. And so it is the I had a cabbage patch when I was a little girl, and I love that cabbage patch because my mama gave me that cabbage patch. It was the first doll she ever gave me. And now I'm on eBay and I'm buying a cabbage patch for $125 when that cabbage patch my mama got me cost 15 way back in the day. And so I am willing to spend an additional $105, $110, not because the item is necessarily worth that a dollar and cent matter, but because my heart says that this is worth more, I'm willing to pay more. Now, are there some things where their value is increased because of personal value? Yes, art falls in that you'll see a painting and the canvas and the paints and the time the artist put in might have cost a whopping $250, and now that painting is on sale for millions. But it's on sale for millions based on things that you always can't measure by dollars, right? The reputation of the artist, the education, how well that particular artist's work has done in the marketplace. We are not going to apply any of that when we are making decisions about what we're going to do to our properties. We're going to do our best in most instances to apply pecuniary value to this situation. Now, so what are some of the things that can affect our return on investment? Well, we've seen, I guess, over these last years, as we've tried to correct the rising inflation, that the cost of money had gotten ridiculously expensive. During the pandemic, because there was so little commerce happening, people were in their homes, they were concerned about going anywhere, and what was happening was nothing was moving, right? No one was buying homes, no one was buying cars. So what the government did, to help to spur us back to our consumer field ways was to bring down the cost of money. And they bring down the cost of money by how they move the interest rates. So money was cheap. We people were working less, especially if you were gig workers, if you were a contractor, construction, because everyone was in. So labor was extremely inexpensive. If they're not building materials, extremely inexpensive. Well, the return on investment, if you had done your project at the beginning of 2020 or the beginning of the pandemic when everybody was afraid, right now you would be looking at return on investment numbers that are just beyond all logic and reason that we have seen in this market before. Why? Because to correct all of that extra money that flooded into the economy, they had to raise the interest rate, which made it more expensive for the average user to buy money, to borrow money. And that expense goes all the way down the supply chain. The person who cuts the log, it costs them more to get the loan to pay their people. Well, they pass that expense on to the person who's going to buy the logs, and they pass that expense on, and the expense gets passed all the way down the line until you get to the homeowner who's getting ready to do a renovation or the person who's looking to purchase in the market because everything just becomes more expensive. Now, I said a lot about what money costs, and it's important because we talk about the open market, but the market can present itself in different ways. The ways that we talk about a market presenting itself is in whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market. So, when we talk about what's happening with the interest rates and the cost of money, if money is cheap, we can all get some, right? And if everybody has money, if everybody is liquid and we can all go and we can shop hard, in a minute, you're going to run out of product, right? Because there's only so much. We already talked about land. You can't destroy it. You can't create it. It is unique. And so, that being the case, there's only so much available for purchase. So, if everyone has the means to purchase, what we do to hedge against that is we raise those prices, right? So now the seller is benefiting not from money being, not from their cost being so expensive that they need to raise the price, but now it's just demand is so great that I can increase the price, right? So, and that's what we began to see through a lot of markets throughout the country was, and especially here, in my opinion, especially as people looked and they were like, oh, it's so cheap to live there. Let me just go buy something out there. And they ran our numbers, far beyond what any real estate professional would have said was reasonable for that similar time frame. And because there was so much money and there were so many buyers and they were vying for the same properties, sellers were able to essentially decide how that deal was going to go. Whereas you would say, well, I really like a white kitchen, and you would have a seller in a buyer's market. The seller would say, let me paint that kitchen for you. In a seller's market, the seller says, well, okay, well, this must not be the house for you. And they will move on to the next person because there is a next person because there is lots of money in the market. So when you have a seller's market, there are lots of buyers because money is less expensive, but there's still only the same amount of property available for sale. What happens in that case is the seller's return on investment increases, the buyer's return on investment typically decreases, and the seller is happy and buyers are sad. Okay. Now let's look at the inverse. We're currently in quite a bit of a buyer's market. They're trying to ease it a little bit, but I'm not sure how much they can ease it without kicking inflation up again, right? So what's happening right now is you may be able to qualify, You may be able to get funding to purchase, right? And the rates are not 2 and 3%, because just don't look for that again. These really are what normal rates look like. It's so funny to me. People are like, rates are so high. Well, 4 and 5% is kind of average. It's kind of normal. Eight is high, two is low. We're kind of sitting in a sweet spot if we're honest about it. So in this buyer's market, the interest rates are higher, right? So prices are also higher. People can't really afford what they would like to afford. And so what happens now is not only that, you can't qualify. They have tightened the restrictions. They have tightened the requirements for getting funding. So it's harder to even get the funding. And so we have fewer people in the buyer's pool. What that does with the same amount of properties available for sale is now the buyer can be more discretionary in their purchasing. Now, that buyer who wanted a white kitchen, if you want to sell your house, you know what I advise you to do? Paint that kitchen white. Unless you have the time to wait and hope that another serious buyer will come along. And so in this instance, money is more expensive. There tends to be more inventory in the market because things are not moving as quickly as they normally would, and prices as a result will begin to come down. Are they coming down right now as quickly as we would like? No. Are they probably going to come down as much as we would like? Probably not. But at least we're beginning to ease out of some of what we had gotten ourselves into previously. So, the impact on return if you're in a buyer's market. The buyer has a better opportunity to have a higher return of investment at that point than the seller, because the seller may be willing to make concessions. The mortgage broker may be willing to give up a few points. There are just some things that happen when properties aren't moving because money is expensive and buyers are scarce. So now we've decided that we own this property, or we're looking to own a property. We're trying to decide what we're going to do with it in terms of appreciate getting some kind of appreciation out of this property. Here are the things that I want you to consider. The first thing is, how long will you own the property? How long will you own the property becomes real important in terms of the pecuniary versus the personal. If you're not going to be in this property very long, do not make a lot of changes that are just for you. This is really what I like. I really love a neon orange sitting room. Don't do that unless you're prepared to eat that cost, right? Because you're going to have to neutralize that thing if you want to sell it at the end of whatever your holding period is. My husband was in the military. We bought a house in Georgia when he was stationed there. We knew that we were not going to be there long. And so it was the blandest house. It was just, we kept it just as simple as we could because we knew that within the next 2 to 3 years, we were going to have to pack up and go elsewhere. And so now that we're in what we feel like is our forever home, it looks like a box of crayons because we're going to be in here. We're going to get to enjoy these deep, rich purples and periwinkles, that reflect a house full of girls. And so those are the kind of things you can do when you know that you're going to be there a little longer, and you may want to consider whether it is worth the expense of having to change something that is supremely personal when you're no longer using the property. The second thing I want you to consider is this a homestead property or your investment property? Because not everybody that's looking to make these changes are looking to make these changes in properties that they own for personal use. What I would do in the home I am using and what I would do in a home that I am either flipping or preparing to lease, completely different. I would want to make sure it's sturdy, it's usable, and it's going to provide me the greatest return on my investment. Sometimes the return on my investment in my personal home is just the ooey gooey. I know this is illogical, but it makes me feel better just to have it. You know, with everything going on in the power grid, I'm when we got out of the military, I'm back in my childhood home, and that's come to our family. And we have never, in the 40 years that our family has owned this home, we've never been without power more than 3 or 4 hours at the most. And if it was 3 or 4 hours, it was like a transformer blew. You know, it wasn't like a storm caused something. But after watching things that were happening, we were like, we need a generator, right? And so we've had this generator. The generator has run a sum total of 15 minutes. 15, but I just feel good knowing it's out there. So it's okay to do the thing that you just feel good knowing it's out there if it's your homestead property and you know that you're going to have the opportunity to enjoy it, or you are willing to give up that return on that investment, or sometimes have a negative return on investment. You know, I'm never going to see this money back, and it's okay. So that's a, will you enjoy the fruits of your labor? That's always, that question when you're making those changes that may not be appealing on the grand spectrum. So we've already decided what we would like to do, but we don't know how to categorize it and whether or not it's really going to impact the value of our home. And this is going to bring us back a little bit to that example we talked about earlier. The difference between deferred maintenance and a capital improvement. I can't remember, I think it was Clifford, Joe, she said it's going to come on and talk about maintaining your home, and that really becomes the foundation of whether or not this is deferred maintenance or capital improvement. Deferred maintenance are those things that keep your property meeting the status quo, right? For homes of a certain age, you expect to see this kind of flooring. You expect it in this particular area of the country. We expect air conditioning. I was not aware that there were parts of the country where air conditioning was not an expected item. I don't know why anybody would live somewhere where you can't cool when you want to and heat when you want to. I digress. There are those things that just keep us in the manner to which we are accustomed, right? And so um, things like when the person said, we put in new windows. Well, it was time for windows. Your house was built in 1972. How long did you expect to be able to just keep resealing, recaulking, resealing, recaulking? At some point, you're going to have to change those windows out. That's deferred maintenance. We put on a new roof. Okay. At some point, you're going to have to replace this roof. I know they like to say, I've never seen a 20-year roof last 20 years, and I've never seen a 30-year roof last 30 years. Not in this climate. And so at some point, just the maintenance that you need to do, it's deferred. You've been putting it off because, it didn't need to be done initially. But at some point in that maintenance schedule, you're going to have to do the work, right? And so those things are part of deferred maintenance, just to keep it like it was. Now, capital improvements, investments that we're making with the hope that our value will increase. Let's talk about this. I love to use my house as an example because this house has gone through various iterations of how it functions in an effort to keep up with the proverbial Joneses. Not to keep up with the Joneses so that we can compete, but to keep up with what is currently happening in homes, so that in the event we had to sell for some reason, the house would show like a current home. So when we first moved in this house, it's an older house built in the 80s. And so, it was that paneling everywhere, not the line paneling, it was the fancy paneling, right? But it was the wood was everywhere on the first floor, everywhere on the first floor. The flooring was the vinyl sheet. And so, it was the stuff that if you look at it too hard and you breathe too hot, it's going to catch on fire. And so initially, the first change that we made was, of course, flooring, right? We replaced the carpet. We got fancy. All the carpet in the house was replaced with Berber carpet. Oh, we were fancy, honey, because that's what was going in. As appraisers and agents, we were able to see what was going into the newer builds, And so sometimes when we see that we've gotten too far from what's going into a new build, we come in and we reassess and we see what we need to change to make it current. So we took the vinyl sheet flooring out and we put in the they when they had the tile that has the flowers at the four corners, it was blue and the flowers were peach. Okay, we were fancy. And the corners met, and when the corners met, it made a full flower in that corner. And so that was our first iteration of go out with the old and in with the new. The next iteration we did was we went to the all white tile because there was a white tile period. So we went through the whole white tile period. Then after that, we went through the tile that was about 2 feet long and 4 inches wide. And it if you were completely clueless about what real wood floors look like, you would say, yes, that floor looks like wood. So it was when they were first dabbling into tile that looks like wood. And then the current iteration where we are now on the first floor is the 4 to 6 foot long plank that's like a foot in width. And these things really do look like wood. They have the groove in the floor and they have the striations and no two tiles look exactly the same. And so we've made some improvements throughout the years to be able to increase and to both maintain the value and to increase the value in the home. Right now, they use the smart thermostats. Well, the smart thermostats required a certain kind of furnace to be able to power it because our old thermostats just ran on batteries. Well, these things now have to get the power from the furnace. So we had to go and do some retrofitting and some other things to make the property function like it was new. We went and we replaced the galvanized piping with PEX. We did, so there are some things that you can do where when an appraiser comes in and you say, look at the condition, and condition is a big part of where your value comes from. And you're able to say, well, we did this and this and this, and I'm like, oh good, you did your deferred maintenance. And then that we did a new roof, we did new windows. I said, go good, you did, your deferred maintenance was on point. Or then you come and say, we completely redid the bathrooms, we completely redid the kitchen, we've replaced all of the plumbing and the electrical. Those are capital improvements. We're going to move that value needle based on those things. So that's how we tell the difference. So we kind of thought about what it is that we hope to accomplish, which category the things fall into, and now we want to know what to do. What changes are good, important changes to make. So the thing that you want to think about if you are preparing to sell or if you have a property that you're preparing to lease out, what would the end user want? If you were the end user, what would you want? So think like the buyer, think like the renter. What would I want in here? And you're trying to think of what you would want, not in that super specific, what do I really love? But like if I walked into a house and they had this, I'd be like, okay, I can make this work. I can make this work. Or this is really nice. Yeah, this is good. And so what I did was sometimes we begin to look at the super expensive as the automatic yes route. And we want to change our thinking with regard to that. So, what you have before you on the slide, for those who can see the slides, is two pieces of stone. Both are natural stone. One is a Carrara marble, one is a granite. Now, our eye has been trained to see marble with those long veins, right? And granite looks a little more rocky. Well, because of where these two pieces of stone were cut, the one with the long striations, that's the granite. And the one with the rocky piece, that's the Carrera marble. Now, with most stone yards wouldn't even sell you Carrera marble that looked like that piece because that's not what people are looking for when they look for Carrera marble. In this instance, Carrera marble is really expensive, especially compared to a, mid-range granite. But our mind says, I must get the most expensive part if I want the greatest return. Not always, because if in your area, what they are using is porcelain tile on the floor, and you go and buy imported bamboo, you are going to lose your money because an appraiser is going to come. You and this person have agreed to transfer this property for $500,000. Nothing in your area has sold for more than 425, but you are counting on this $75,000 worth of extra special stuff you've put in the house making the valuation difference. It will not. The appraiser will simply come and say that the home has been over improved. It is in marvelous condition, but it is only worth 440. We'll give you 15,000 maybe. Sometimes they'll say 425. But we don't get to just make up what something should be worth based on how we feel. Even as appraisers, so let's go to think like an appraiser. Even as an appraiser, if I can see, I can, if you've been doing something long enough, you can see when trends are getting ready to shift. I can see that we are getting ready to trend, to switch into an upward trend. I still can't do it because we have to appraise based on historical data. What has actually happened, not what do we think will happen. And so we always want to be careful when we make changes to keep it into the framework of what's happening in the homes around me. If I want to sell my property and I want the best bang for my buck, and every property in the that's selling in the neighborhood has granite countertops and hardwood floors or luxury vinyl plank throughout, and I still have vinyl sheet flooring and a laminate countertop, it's never going to do what I would hope that it would do. We'll say, well, our neighbor sold their house for blah 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 amount of dollars. Why am I only able to sell my house for blah 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 amount of dollars? Well, how do you compare in terms of what you both have done with your homes? And then we talked about quality over quantity. It's not how much you spent, it's just about how well it fits within what's happening in your neighborhood. We talked about not improve. We don't want to over improve. We also don't want to not do enough. We don't, if we are a granite neighborhood or a stone countertop neighborhood, we do not care that you have put in these lovely new laminate. I mean, it's the fanciest laminate product you can buy. That's not what's happening in the neighborhood. So you want to make sure that you are right in the sweet spot of doing enough, not too much, and also not enough. You just want to make sure you're doing enough. And then how is the market moving? If you can see that there is a slowdown in the market and you cannot hold the property long enough to make the investment worth it, don't make the investment. If you can see the property is heating up, don't wait so long trying to get to the top of the mountain that you miss the peak and it's on the downslide by the time you decide to move. We're seeing a lot of that now. People who held through 21, 22, that was a wonderful time to be alive in real estate because things were flying off the shelves. It wasn't a wonderful time to buy. It wasn't a wonderful time to buy, but it was great to be an appraiser or a broker because it was a lot of activity. But you had people who waited and they waited until like 24, 25. I haven't really seen what's happening in the top of this year quite yet, but they waited, trying to wait and see just how far was the market going to peak, and the market had already peaked. It had peaked and it was beginning to come back down, and they missed it by not paying attention to how the market is moving. So I always recommend if you're going to be really playing in the real estate markets, get a professional to help you and make sure they really have been doing it long enough to know what they're doing. You want people to learn and practice, but you may not want them to learn and practice with you. So, what are some low cost changes we can do? If we're trying to just, make a few little things to get us in a better position, what are some things we can do? Number one thing, any day of the week, even in the house that I live in every day, clean up. There's just something about clean that feels good. And it makes me not look for what else is wrong. If I walk into a space as an appraiser and I have to literally convince my mind, focus on condition, not the stuff, right? And sometimes you can't see the condition for the stuff. So now I'm making assumptions. You don't want me to make assumptions. You want me to see what is present. And so you want to have, and you don't want the buyer to make assumptions. If the buyer comes in and there are smudges on the wall and there are holes in the sheetrock and holes in the door, if you didn't take care of these things that are easily seen, then surely you didn't deal with the ramifications of the leak that you had in your bathroom. That's just the way the human mind works. If you haven't done the simple things, surely you've not done the difficult things. So clean up. If there are places that need painting, do the painting. If there are some damaged or stained things that we can do a quick replacement or repair of, let's do those things. Those things aren't as expensive as doing a complete renovation, but they can brighten and bring fresh life into a space. Now, we've done the easy thing. How do we really move this needle? In the appraisal, if I'm doing a residential appraisal for the lending purposes, we use a form. In that form, they ask us to grade the condition of the property, and it's a 1 to 6 level grade, C1, C2, 3 through C6. And the only rooms they ask you about in the entire condition section is how long ago or how recently were the kitchen and bathrooms renovated and or updated, or has it not been done at all? Literally the only two places in the house it'll ask you about. And so people will say, well, I painted the whole house. Great. The kitchen is still from 1972. I replaced the flooring. Fine. You still need a wrench to, turn the stove on. And so if you really are trying to make a big investment in that where you may have an opportunity, and I always say may because there are no guarantees in this, but where you have the greatest opportunity to see increased return on investment, it is in kitchens and bathrooms. And then floor and decor. We talked about that a little bit. Just because you like to live in a crayon box doesn't mean that the place should reflect a crayon box. One of the things we say, if we're getting ready to list something, we'll walk in and we'll say, so how much did you put aside for painting? Because we're going to have to do something about this. And so you want to make sure that you haven't made it so personalized that it is no longer appealing in the market. So now we're going to get into the little messy part. Is it worth it? Because these are the things that people are selling us in droves with the promise that it is going to just make our values go through the roof. And as an appraiser, we're gonna look at each of these in turn. Solar panels. So we are still oil and gas country, right? We burn petrol at ridiculous amounts. We use way more than our fair share. America uses more than its fair shares, and Texas uses the bulk of that. And so, if you are getting solar panels for your own comfort, fine. If you are getting solar panels to do anything with regard to your value, you will more than likely not see it back. The other thing I want you to consider about solar panels is the cost of the panels themselves. There have been lots of instances where I'm doing appraisals where people are selling their home and they're still in these contracts for these solar panels that they installed. and the buyer's lender will not let the buyer purchase that home unless the seller pays those solar panels off in full. And so it could become a hindrance to you being able to sell your property because, the lender will not be second. And if they transfer that home with an active lien, the active lien takes first position and the lender will not take second position to anybody else. It will be the requirement that their money is the most important. And so be very careful with the purchase of solar panels. Generators. I have one. I think they are a sound investment for your own personal comfort and ease of mind. It is not going to, we reference them, we acknowledge that they are present, but it isn't necessarily going to do, if you spent $15,000 on a generator, it's not going to be reflected in your appraised value in that way. Swimming pools. Do you enjoy swimming? It's another one of those things. How long will you be there to enjoy it? I have a pool. We love it. I have 6 children, and so it makes my summer times real easy because I can just put them in the backyard and let them go for what they know. But if you are doing it as an investment vehicle, it is not for 2 reasons. One, every purchaser doesn't want a pool. Even though we're in hot as heck Houston, Texas, not all purchasers want pools. They are an insurance liability. They are just a liability risk in general. If a person is coming to rob your property and they fall in your pool and drown, you are liable. Right? It's that same thing. And so if you are planning to enjoy it, then by all means, go ahead. If you are looking for it to be an investment mechanism, it's not going to do what you think it will. And so I think you know where I'm going, even with the outdoor kitchens. Again, if you're going to enjoy it, I think your home should feel like whatever, place of respite or retreat that you need it to feel like. But do that for yourself, not necessarily for the investment vehicle with those things that are not market required. Are there some segments of the market where a buyer expects a water feature on the property, whether it's a pond, a lake, a swimming pool, fountains flowing in the front? Yes, there are segments of the market where if you don't have some kind of water feature, nobody's going to buy that house. There are sectors of the market where if you don't have really great outdoor living, outdoor kitchen, nobody's going to buy that house. But those particular sections of the market, those are niche areas. It does not apply to most of the market overall. So, what do? We make a plan and we're honest about what we have to spend. We're honest and specific about what we are willing to lose. We write down what we hope to accomplish. Otherwise, you get scope creep. I've changed my floors. Now my walls look shabby. I've changed my walls. Now my couch doesn't look right. I've changed the couch. Oh, look at that fan. So you want to be very honest and specific about what it is that you are hoping to accomplish so that things don't get away from you. And without and beyond anything else, do not overextend. Do not spend more than you have. And absolutely do not spend more than you are willing to lose. Because I don't care how good a situation it may be in when you start a project, you never know what it's going to look like when you finish. We did an addition on the property here, and we started putting together the funding and the plan at the beginning of the pandemic when things were cheap and things, life was good. But by the time we actually got ready to build, the roof had been removed. We had no choice but to continue moving ahead. The cost of things had risen 900%. The board that cost $4 was now 36. And so we had no choice but to keep moving forward. We knew that it wasn't going to give us the return initially that we had anticipated, but we also had no plans to do anything different. So it made it worth it to go ahead and carry out the plan. Do not overextend. So if you have any questions, I can be contacted at by cell phone 281-414-5709. My email address is N like Nikki, V like Victoria, Collins at keysres.com and www.keysres.com is our little starter website. I feel fancy since we got that. So I'm just hoping that this will help you to make really great decisions with regard to your real estate moving forward. Thank you, Eric. I try. I try to give a great presentation. Let me see.
Trying to log
Okay.
back on here. Sorry, I
Okay.
couldn't. My screen, I'm looking at two screens here and I'm trying to do two different things at the same time. So yes, thank you very much, Eric. Let me see if we've got any questions on social media here. And I do not. Okay, well, somebody had the question about the generators, but you already answered that. How does somebody find out about generators? Like who do they contact? Because I know again, there's so many different companies and things out there. You don't really know for so many people that don't know much about them. Like how do you find like a one-stop shop that'll kind of give you information about
Okay.
generators?
Um, can I answer Alex's question real quick in
What
the
was the
chat? Does
question?
a driveway bring value?
Okay.
So, okay, so this is the part I didn't mention, and I probably should have. That sometimes having a thing may not necessarily add value, but not having that thing would detract from value. So if you're in a subdivision where everybody has, or one, if you're in a subdivision, you're going to have some HOA rules, right? In most cases, where they're going to require certain things. But if a driveway is normal or typical and you don't have one, then what might happen in that instance is you would lose your appeal in the market. So it wouldn't necessarily bring your value down, but it may make it where you wouldn't have the opportunity to participate in the market the way you would like to. And with regard to the generator question, so we had the lovely, so we general contract, and we decided that we weren't going to general contract our generator because we had not done it before. So we had brought in a company to do the generator. They did not, I think you know about this, don't you? But they did not file like the permits and stuff with the city of Missouri City. And so CenterPoint came and turned off the power so that they could connect all of the things. When we called to get the power reconnected that same day in the afternoon, they said, "Where are your permits?" And so we were without power because we had to start the permitting process from the very beginning. Generator is in place, pad is laid, um, transfer switch is in place, everything is in place. 18 days, no power because CenterPoint would not turn on that power unless Missouri City said, "We have their permit, we've done the inspections, everything is in order, you can turn that power on." So we had to come up with some very creative ways to have lights on in here for about 3 or 4 weeks. So you just
Wow.
want to be sure that whoever you utilize is reputable, that they follow the rules for your jurisdiction. There are no shortcuts. And this doesn't apply to just generators, this is everything. You
Mm-hmm.
want to always follow the rules of your jurisdiction. And we say, we'll say, well, they make things so difficult. Missouri City has a history. People say, we don't work out there because they make things so hard. They make things so hard for contractors. but it is really for the public welfare. Some of it is, was just for they can make money. No, some of it is you do need to know how far that generator needs to be away from your house. You do need to know how far those pipes need to be dug underground. Those rules are in place for a reason. And typically the reason became a reason because something bad happened when that rule was not in place. And so let your feelings be hurt, let it feel expensive, but also do what is the safest thing for your family.
And you might also want to include that if somebody's giving you a hard time about following the rules, there's probably some kind of indication that they're the ones that's not following the rules. So
Mm-hmm.
it might not be somebody you want to do business with in the first place. So
Exactly
so
right.
do keep that in mind. It's the same thing with answering questions. If you're just asking questions, and somebody doesn't want to answer a question for you or don't want to comply with giving you some kind of documentation or asking you about references and insurances and bonds and whatever, if they don't want to give any of that stuff to you or giving you a hard time about invoices and putting things in writing, that's probably an indication that's somebody that you probably don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
business with.
Mm-hmm.
So just just kind of FYI. All right. Um, that is all we have here in the chat, and I didn't see anything else for you so far,
Mm-hmm.
Nikki. So we're going to go ahead and go on to we have Mr. Clifford Joe with GI Inspections, who's going to be talking about the home maintenance side of things. So, Cliff, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and you can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, how's everybody? Can you hear me?
I can't you when you move around a little bit, you get lower than high.
Uh-oh, uh-oh.
I
What
got
about
you
now?
though. Yes.
Something like that?
Okay.
Okay. I just feel like my face is like all up in the screen. I wanted to mention what piggyback off of what Nikki was just talking about. But it's true to form because right now, when I leave here, I have to go to Sugarland because I have a home where you pick your contractors and pick them wisely. Because I'm dealing with one right now where the homeowner decided to renovate the home, and they've a job that was supposed to take 6 weeks has turned into almost 10. So they're kind of hot right now, and the permits are important. Jurisdictions are important because every jurisdiction operates a little different. Different. Excuse me. The bases are the same, but one may take it a step further than the other because, again, something may have happened in that jurisdiction that required some extra attention. I was on a job this morning, and this I haven't had a chance to. I wanted to add this photo into this uh, slide, but I'll tell you, this house, maybe 12 years old. I was doing the inspection when I walked outside. The house was leaking from the wall and the foundation out the weep holes. So that told me that there was a leak somewhere in the plumbing. There was a vanity in the master bathroom right on the other side of that wall. So it was a leak somewhere in there. It wasn't showing up inside the home. It was showing up between the walls and it was draining outside. So periodically, I would say once a year, turn all your valves on in your house, all showers, sinks, and everything. Let them run. Walk around your home to see if you see any leaks or anything that are out there, because those little things, are we can't be in two places at one time. We can't be in the shower and outside looking to see if we got a leak or something. So that's something I would tell you personally to go ahead and look at. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get cranking on this presentation, and we're gonna go from here. Um, a little bit about me. Uh, I'm an Army veteran, combat Army veteran. I did 2 tours in Iraq, 1991, and then I went again in 2005. I've been an inspector since 2009. I'm also a real estate salesperson, but I really don't practice the real estate thing. I'm HVAC technician, project manager, drone operator. I'm a master inspector, and I'm also an international code council member. That code council is coming into play right now because a lot of the builders are not following code. So I thought it would be a good idea to start studying code in depth because it's starting to help me out in what I do. I want to go into the maintenance of the home is extremely important. Poorly maintained homes, deferred maintenance, and even the use of unqualified tradesmen can lead to costly repairs over time. And trust me, they do. They do lead to costly repairs over time. So if I were you, I would take a picture of this page real quick. Just that line. The unqualified tradesmen can lead to costly repairs over time. They do.
Cliff, Cliff, you're not sharing the screen. So if there's something there we're supposed to see, we can't see it.
Okay, I am so. Do you give me the hold up, let
Yeah,
me
you're
back.
you're closed.
Okay, let me escape here. Did you give me the permission to share?
Yes.
Okay, why aren't you seeing me? I am.
You're in Zoom and hit the green share button on the Zoom screen.
Let's go here. Back in Zoom. Why am I not seeing the green button anymore? Let me see it now.
It's,
There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Boom. Are you seeing me now?
it's coming up. Yep.
All righty. So let me now go here. Can you still see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what. So we're gonna back up. Okay. And this is what I was. Can you see the maintenance of the home? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when we talk about maintenance of a home, as I stated before, uh, deferred maintenance and even the use of unqualified tradesmen can lead to costly repairs over time. That is so correct. You can end up paying far more than what you intended on doing. I will ask anyone, and I'll piggyback off of what Nikki stated. When someone's coming in to do a work on your home, that's out of your scope, that you don't know how to really go and do that job thoroughly yourself, ask for documentation such as licenses, insurance, bond, how long they've been doing it. Even ask for references if they can give them to you. Do they have a website? Ask for those things, something that you could see while you're shopping around for the person who's going to be doing the job. Um, I will say this too. Sometimes it's not a good idea to use family. I'm just saying. Sometimes not a good idea to use family. Today we're going to go over 5 key areas of a home as well as a few others that need regular maintenance care. And if you have a question, just Nia can see it. She'll just chime in and let me know. The key areas I really want to talk about are the roof, foundation, the plumbing, electrical, the HVAC system, and the drainage. Drainage of a home, if you have poor drainage around your home or even with plumbing, that can result in some costly repairs, and you end up with a lot of damaged damaged material, such as framing members get damaged, foundation repairs, especially if it floods. If your area around your home is constantly flooding when it rains, you'll end up with a foundation problem. Uh, if you could see this, get a photo of it, because seasonal maintenance, if you could see this sheet, get a photo of it. As a matter of fact, if you're in this class, you're going to get a copy of a maintenance book. Nia is going to send it to you. It's my maintenance book. Use it as a guide to help you when you're doing some repairs on your home. Sometimes if these repairs are just out of your scope, I would not recommend doing them. Just hire someone. But if you're reading the book, you'll get understanding, a fundamental understanding of how the repairs should be done. So if someone's to come out and start working on your home, you'll know what they're supposed to be doing and what they're not supposed to be doing. So I would get an image of that. But again, Nia's going to send it to you. But seasonal maintenance is the practice of performing specific tasks at home, beginning at each season to ensure your home is in good condition and to prevent potential issues and maintain its value. You'll be surprised at how much your home can retain its value when you can document and show that you have maintained your home. I've seen homes that go out on the market and go and do the inspection, and some of the repairs that could have been done that may have cost total $700 end up costing the homeowner maybe a 2 or 3 thousand, because now they got to knock that off the price. So little things like that, maintaining your home makes a big difference. That was just a number I'm throwing out there, but it shows when you don't take care of the home. Home maintenance, the Most home maintenance tasks can be done by the homeowner, such as cutting the grass, changing out your air filters, testing your smoke alarms, and even keeping your windows clean. But I want to focus on some issues that may require the help of a professional, and even when what look like may happen if the work is done incorrectly. This is a photo of a roof repair. And this picture, a spray sealant was used as a roof repair. The proper way to repair this is to replace the boot flashing. The area will leak again. Also note the roof repair is not a permanent fix. So I want to back up a bit when I say a roof repair is not a permanent fix. It's never a permanent fix because when you start making repairs on a roof, there's either been some type of impact damage like high winds, tree branches, or the roof is just aging out. So at some point, that area may leak again, or the area adjacent to that repair may start to leak. So the things that you should consider. Also, like with this image, that's not a professional repair job. That's somebody just got on the roof and did a bum repair. It's probably going to start leaking again. I'm pretty sure if they never done anything to it, it's leaking now. Usually a poor repair will start showing up again on a roof in about 30, 40 days. So it's something to consider with the roof. Um, Roof flashings, and you can see where the arrow is pointing at. You see how warped the flashing is? See, when you're looking at the roof flashings like this and they're lifted and warped like this, water gets under there. Water gets under there, it starts to touch the decking. If it gets to the decking, now you're going to have, moisture problems. You get moisture problems, now you're going to have pest problems. So then these, if you don't paint them on your flashings, if you don't paint those, they will corrode and they will rust. So if you're out getting a home, you're getting your roof replaced, and you get a quote, make sure that quote includes replacing the roof flashings and the vents on the roof. Because sometimes I've seen roof jobs that were done and they only replaced the shingles. And also make sure on that roof, make sure they're taking the old roof off and not putting a new shingle on top of the old one. It's allowable, but it's not recommended. I say again, in the state of Texas, you can put a new roof on top of an old one, but it's not recommended. And the reason why, because your nails are not going to always reach that decking below. So if the nails are not reaching the decking below, if the wind comes through and hit it at the right angle, it's just going to pull all your shingles up. Tree branches. Anytime you have tree branches hanging over your roof, always cut them back because this is where they damage your shingles. Because those tree branches, once they start to damage the shingles, now you're going to probably have a leak that's going to come up in the attic space. Depending on the severity of the leak, it'll show itself on the ceiling in your home. Also, something to look at is when your insurance companies, they do what's called, they may have someone come out with a drone, they may do satellite imagery. But if they can see those tree branches over your home, they're going to call you and they're going to say, hey, look, I think it's a good idea that you cut these down. And they're going to give you a certain amount of time to get it done. Because if you don't have it done, they're going to come back and they may drop you from your insurance policy if you don't take care of it. I've seen that happen before. So
I'm I'm definitely can account for that and be a witness. They didn't call me. They sent me a letter and basically said
mm,
that I had 3 weeks, that I had to get somebody to come out, or otherwise my insurance would be canceled. So I spent quite a bit of money to get trees replaced from that weren't even touching, not even close to touching. It's just the branches were even just hanging over,
hanging over.
and I had to get the whole trees cut. So yeah.
Mm, there goes your vacation money. So we're gonna look at the foundations. In this home, I'm looking at how you see how close that tree is to the foundation. So this is definitely causing some foundation issues. This tree should have actually been removed by the homeowner years ago. Years ago. Actually, when I did the inspection on this house, the foundation was so bad in this room, it was showing severe cracks around the windows in that actual corner, and the door couldn't close. So This is an issue that should have been addressed a long time ago. At this point, excuse me, I wouldn't waste my time getting the foundation repaired until I took care of the root cause of what's making my foundation bad. And in this case, it's the tree. So these trees will cause movement. You want to get in front of it as soon as possible. Settlement cracks, we see a lot of them. Settlement cracks will develop over time due to age, dry soil, repairs, and lack of drainage. I always say keep your soil hydrated and maintain proper drainage around your home. When I'm looking at it, this crack, this one is normal. When it starts to separate, I don't see a problem with this. When it separates, that's when you're gonna have a problem. And I see that far often than not. Keeping your soil hydrated. Sometimes you can use a soaker hose, or some homes that we have sprinkler systems, or go old school and just water it yourself with a hose and with a spray nozzle on it. But you want to keep the soil around your home consistent. If the more consistent the soil is, the least likely you'll have a chance of some major foundation problems. Because once that soil starts to contract, you're going to have problems. And I see it far more than not. Whenever we have a drought here in Texas and Houston in particular, it's usually taking foundation companies 3 to 4 weeks to come out just to even look at your home. And then when they get out there and they start digging, they're gonna have to put in some work. So your drainage is key too. If your house around your home, the drainage is poor around your home, you'll have foundation problems because it's water that's just working its way back towards the foundation. So it's not settling properly. So drainage and always keep it hydrated is a good frame of mind to be in when it comes to the drainage around your home. This one, looking at this corner, how it's chipped away. It hadn't fallen off, but eventually that's going to fall. All homes will have chipping at the corners. At some point in time, they're going to have them. This is not a major issue, but it's a cosmetic issue. You want to just go ahead and just resurface this area. I could see where they had done some repairs at some point in time. Always going to happen. You're going to just so anytime in the state of Texas, you look at, I've seen $1 million homes and I've seen entry level homes. They all have it. It's the same material they're using. So something to think about when you see a home with the chipping at the corner, just go ahead and resurface that area. Also look at it as a maintenance thing because yearly you may have to come back and resurface that area. Also, if I see this on an inspection, I have to report it. So if you as a homeowner, you're looking to sell your home and you see this chip on the corner, go ahead and resurface that because now the inspector, he sees it, he's going to say, yeah, it may have had chipping, but the repair was made. So now that can't be used against you in the event that you're trying to sell your home. Uh, Attic framing. If you look from between the two air ducts at the top, and I'm looking at this framing member coming straight down, and you see how it's bowing out to the right. And that house had major foundation problems. And the foundation problems were bad enough to where it was causing stress on the framing members in the attic. Now, this could have been repaired after they did the foundation repair. I would have made a repair here, but they didn't. Matter of fact, this was an investor. The investor made this repair, and it's not a good repair. I mean, he did some partial repairs on the foundation, had no documentation of it, and again, when professionals come through and do the work, this is not the work of a professional. When anybody come in and work on a system, they'll know this is not good. If I'm looking at this, this framing member, this post bold like that, I would know to go in and make the sister repair where I'm putting two pieces on each side once I make the cut to get some sturdiness there. That didn't happen. So at some point, this is going to snap. And when it snaps, it's going to cause the roof, the ridge line on the roof, it's going to start to sink. Um, Attic insulation. Again, this is another home. Go in, look in the attic, no insulation. On the average, you're getting R19 insulation is usually about 6 inches deep. When you put insulation in your attic, get the right insulation. for the home because there's some insulation that's rated for commercial use and not residential use. So again, when you get a contractor to come out there, make sure they're using the right insulation. Make sure they also leave the certificate. The certificate is usually a document that's attached to one of the attic framing members, and it's usually close to the area where you enter your attic space. So when you don't see it, how do we know what insulation is used? It may look like it's residential, but it may be rated for commercial. So we can never guess. We have to know it. So when you do it yourself, even if you don't have the certificate, see if you can reach out to the company where you purchased the insulation from. Usually that manufacturer can issue you a certificate. So I would start in those realms. And if I'm using it in the right way, 6 inches deep, it makes a difference. Unfortunately for this home, they're going to have some extremely high utility bills when it comes to your AC because the house is not insulated. I don't know what happened. Why did they not put any in there? But we can't. You don't want to live in a home like this where there's no insulation. The units are constantly running, so you're getting extremely high wear on the AC and the furnace. So that's not good. This is a thermal installation. I mean, this is a thermal image of the insulation, and the hot spots what I'm looking at is showing what the insulation is actually missing. And when there's missing insulation, those like this is a bedroom. That room is probably going to be one of the hotter rooms out of the 3 bedrooms that are in that home. I think this bottom picture was at a um, what do you call that? I think this was more the living room area that was going into a bedroom. But again, we were missing insulation there too. So something to think about when you insulate your home. And a lot of times, insulation it gets old. It's up for replacement. But then sometimes, and this is the most common, when the home has had some damage due to busted pipes. Once those pipes burst, and the water starts leaking, even with the roof, and the roof starts leaking down to the ceiling, it's hitting that insulation. So once water comes into contact with the insulation, that insulation is no longer good. So that's why you want to make sure you replace it full of old insulation. It's probably all matted up at that point. Pull it out and put some new insulation in. That'll help keep your house warm or cool as needed. Again, this is electrical. What I'm looking at, where the arrow is pointing, they had the electrical was updated, but not updated to standards. So I know a professional didn't do this. The junction box was just resting on the attic floor. They had some old aluminum wire that was left in the attic, so you have to always verify that your contractors are qualified to do the job to prevent, more money later spending money on corrections because any contractor, any electrician that they would have told you, you got to pull that aluminum wiring out. Don't leave it sitting in there. Pull that out, and then we put the new insulation in. That junction box wouldn't have just been resting on the attic floor. It would have been attached to one of the framing members because when it's loose like that, resting on the floor like that, that's a trip hazard. And you trip in your attic space, you not on one of your ceiling joists, you're probably gonna fall right through on that drywall or that sheetrock. So something to think about when you're doing the repairs yourself. Electrical. I remember going back and forth with an electrician about this. He double tapped the breakers, and there are some breakers that are double tapped, and some of them are allowed. The problem is when he double tapped these, he should have upgraded the entire system, and he didn't. He did the double tap on the box, but inside the house he used the same old wiring. Once you upgrade your box, you should rewire the entire house to prevent a fire hazard because the insulation on the wires may not be rated for the breakers. And that's something I learned going back. We learn as we go. I learned something from an electrician that day. But I still wrote it because I knew he double tapped him and he didn't replace the wiring in the house. So once you again, once you see something electrical, especially on the older systems, you double tap on the old ones, ask them did they replace the wiring in the home. More than likely they did. They just updated the box. So that's one is operating at a higher efficiency than the other. That's meaning the box is operating at a higher efficiency than the wires. The insulation on the wires may not be rated to handle what that box can put out. So now you got a possibility of a fire. Um, this one was funny. They took the cover plate off, and this was under the sink in the kitchen. So I mean, wet hands and electricity don't mix. What happens when if the cover plate is there to protect your hands? So if any water, my wet hands are touching those switches, I'm probably going to shock somebody or myself. So always make sure your cover plates are heavy. This is a ground wire. This house, the house wasn't grounded. So meaning that if there was a lightning storm, if lightning struck and caused a power surge, almost everything in that house that's low voltage, you're probably going to lose it because there's no path for that current to travel. It's stuck in the house, moving around, running through your system, trying to find a way out, and it can't. And they can't find that safe path. It's going to stay in the house. So depending on the device that it shorts out, it may create a fire. It may not. It may smell. You may smell something smoking. So it's just something to consider when you're out there. Here's another one. Again, this was something. It was funny, but it wasn't funny. The homeowner had the house, had a plumber, and she kept telling me it was a master plumber who came in and put that water heater in for. Great looking job, but it had a leak. It had a major leak because if you look below, you can see the black pan that's under there. Well, you put the pan under here for the pan to be, but it doesn't drain. So you had a leak at the connection where the arrow was pointing, and that drain pan didn't drain. It was just a catch bucket. So that meant every so many days somebody had to come up there and empty it. So that's not the work of a qualified plumber. He would have put the drain pan in. He would have ran the drain line outside the home. So these little things that add up. They may have known what they were doing, but it's the little things that get the catch on it later. So that was the issue. As a matter of fact, when I walked in that house, the entire ceiling from the front door to the living room, that was about 8 feet, was almost ready to cave in. It was all soaked, saturated. So I had to go in the attic. See, I thought it was the AC, but it wasn't. I thought it was the AC drain pan. It wasn't. It was the water heater. So I went ahead and shut the water off from the house and just called them. And if you are a homeowner and you're getting a water heater installed, make sure you get the right people who know what they're doing because there are a number of things that can happen and you'll end up having to pay more. One, you got the wrong person to put it in that wasn't licensed. They may have damaged the water heater when they put it up in the attic or in the garage. I see a lot of dented water heaters. They may function, but you may have damaged the glass lining inside the water heater. It doesn't show right now, but eventually it'll start rusting out. And when it rusts out, that's when you're going to have a problem. Now, if you have a problem and initially and it doesn't work, and you call in the manufacturer to have them give you a new water heater, they're going to ask a series of questions. Who put the water heater in? You may have avoided the warranty the moment you didn't hire a professional to put the water heater in. So now you're probably stuck with it. You may be able to get, depending on how long it lasts, you may be able to get a new water heater from the company that sold it to you, like Lowe's or Home Depot. But that's something to look at. So you have to be careful when putting new appliances and plumbing fixtures in place. Um, this is a water leak under a sink. The faucet was leaking when it was in use. So that's telling me the valve, we look at our fixtures in the bathrooms, there's a gasket that's in there. And usually when it goes out, when you open that valve, you'll know it'll start leaking. So the easy fix is to go ahead and just replace the fixture. Replace the fixture, you won't have a problem anymore. And they all get old, even our shower heads, they get old. The little rubber gasket inside gets old. You just want to go ahead and pull it out. Once you pull it out and you just pull that fixture out, pop another one in, you should be good to go. But again, when you do that, make sure you use the right tools because there are tools to make that job real easy and there are tools to make that job a challenge. HVAC system, HVAC systems, I would say if you're a homeowner, get your system serviced at least twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. And the reason why you want to get it serviced because it may be an issue in there that
Your voice
water.
is kind of fading out, Cliff.
It faded out. Okay, what about now?
Okay, yeah, better.
Oh, okay, let me scoot over. See, one of the things I'm looking at here, so sometimes when you want to get your system serviced at least twice a year. In this case, this was a brand new system. The installer left the red tag is resting on the top of the burners, and your warranty papers are sitting folded up in a plastic sleeve over on the side. You're gonna lose all of that the moment you fire up that furnace. So again, you gotta ask yourself, did a professional put this in or who put this in? Because now, if you have a problem with the system and they ask you for the warranty on it, you no longer have a warranty. You burned it up. So it's the little things that make sense. We have to be careful. So I just pulled the tag and the warranty papers out, and I just gave them to the owner. Hey, you might want to go ahead and fill these out and I told them where they were. So little things make a big difference later. You can't see this here much. I'm gonna see if my mouse can you see my mouse circling?
Yes.
Okay, you see that little pinhole that
Okay.
I'm circling around?
Yes.
That's a leak in your air duct. And that's forced air, that's forced cold air coming out of your air duct. And what it's doing is building up all of that condensation here. All of that condensation, because that little hole has that forced air and it's mixing with hot air in the attic space. That's going to be a mold problem real soon if they don't get in front of it. So again, that's why you want to have the maintenance done. You may have gone in the attic space, not pay attention to something, bump the plenum, even one of your air ducts did some damage. You don't even know it. That was just a small hole. The only reason I really caught it is because somewhere I saw the condensation first, but then as I walked closer, I could feel a little area. It was like, this is cold air. Where is it coming from? And it was coming from that little break. So gutters, always clean your gutters. Always clean your gutters. Gutters that stay full like these up here, all of this here, when they're full like that, water collects in the gutters and it builds up and now it's getting out of the gutters and it's damaging the board, what we call the fascia board behind the gutters. So that'll start to dry rot over time. Then you'll have a bigger problem because now you got to take the gutters down, replace the fascia boards that are rotted, and then put the gutters back up. But if you keep them clean, you won't have that problem. Down at the bottom here, at the elbow for the gutter, it's missing what we call a splash block. And that splash block catches the water and pushes it away, lets it flow away from the foundation. This is what we need to have done because now, if you look outside here, you see where that little hole is starting to form in the ground, that little ditch. That's because of the water coming out, and it's coming out at a nice flow, and it's just eroding all the way, all of your dirt away. And once it erodes enough of it away over time, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and then there's going to be areas under your foundation wall right there. It'll get down to it. I'm sorry, it'll get back. It'll get down to it, and then if enough of it happens, depending on how many of these you have along that wall, you may end up with some foundation problems. And it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Um, this range, every one of these knobs on this one, they were difficult to operate. They were so worn out, they were breaking as I was trying to use them. So I eventually had to just kind of stop. These are easy fixes. Your knobs on your range, and keep your range clean too. But your little knobs on it, they wear out. I would always keep the name of my range, the manufacturer, and then I would just go to the appliance store. And sometimes you may not get them from the appliance store; they may not have them in stock, but you may be able to go online and order them. Do not keep the old ones. This is where it becomes a problem. What happens when you're not at home and you get the teenage kid of yours who want to go in there and start cooking something and can't turn it off? That's where you start having a problem. Plumbing. Always use the right material for the job. In this case, what I'm looking at, this fixture is not rated for a bathtub. This fixture is rated for a kitchen sink. It wasn't rated for a bathtub. and they used it. Actually, it wasn't even a kitchen sink; it was a bathroom sink. It's not rated the same. So when you're buying your fixtures that you're going to replace in your home, make sure that they're rated for the right setting. Like that, this one wasn't rated for a bathtub; it was rated for a sink. Another giveaway to it is when you turn the water on, it took forever to fill that up. It took me almost 45 minutes to fill that tub up because the water pressure was so low. It's rated to flow at a different flow rate than what is designed for where it's being used now. So always use the right fixtures. And if you don't know, just ask the person who's in the store that you're into. Like you're in Home Depot or Lowe's, they always have somebody there that can help you. But just ask them before you buy it. Garage doors. Um, Again, always use qualified people. Whoever installed this, they only put one screw on this bracket. You should have had at least three to hold this in place. What's going to happen is when this screw falls out, you're not going to have a good connection right there to support this bar, and you're going to have problems with the garage door. Once it opens, it may open, but it won't close. It's going to struggle to close, and you may do more damage to it than good. But this is something. So again, when you these will break over time. When they break, you can either get the entire panel replaced, or you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and they'll sell you what we call it's like a little plate, and you can put that plate, install it along this part, the back of this bracket here, and once you screw it in, it gives you that reinforced support that you need to operate that door. And I almost want to call them blanks, but it's like little spacer plates, but and they're metal because I actually used them before and they work pretty good. Let's see, dishwasher. This dishwasher, we had a block drain line on this. So when I'm looking at it, see how the water is flowing back into the sink? That open end needs to be facing the sink because if it's not, and you have a backflow problem on the dishwasher and it's facing the counter, all of that water is going to spray over the counter and onto the kitchen floor. So always have that opening facing the sink. And it's usually caused because you have under your sink, you have a forgot what you call it, but the line is the backflow line is hooked up behind the sink is raised. Well, if you leave that drain line just resting on the floor under the cabinet, you're gonna have a problem, and that's what you don't want. So you want a high loop is what it's called. You keep the high loop raised up, and it'll prevent a block that'll come because the food particles can't get in there and just sit. But if it's just resting on the floor under the sink, more than likely it's going to create a blockage, and that's what we don't want. Um,
Can you say that part again? You kind of faded out a little bit
I'm sorry. Let's go back.
about it being on the floor, and then I
Hmm.
couldn't hear the rest.
Well, you don't want that hose resting on the floor. That hose that's when it's hooked correctly, it's hooked in a position that's called a high loop, and it's hooked up behind the sink in the kitchen. And you'll see that clear hose running under the sink and to the dishwasher. It'll make a connection to the food waste disposal, and that's why you want it connected. You don't want it just resting on the floor of the cabinet in the kitchen because that's when you're going to have your backflow problem because particles and everything get in there and get stopped up, and that's what we don't want. Let's see. Um, termites, termites, and the first picture here, termites at the foundation. Um, this whole neighborhood later found out this is North Houston. This whole neighborhood was infested with termites. Um, Matter of fact, the material that they used when they were building the houses out there, the material came in country with termites. So those termites that was there were not part of the U.S. Part of the ecosystem here. They actually came from China. You can't really see where my hand is. And here, I got my hand up here. That rafter here has termite damage. And that building is old, old. That building was built if I'm not mistaken, was built like 52 or something like that. Good wood material, but too many leaks, plumbing issues, and roof issues where water was getting in created a home for termites, unfortunately. And here at the lower left, I'm following this little line up. It's like a little faint line there. That's one. There's two. There's three. And here's four. All of
Cliff,
those are termite lines. Huh?
are you using an external microphone or something like your handheld or
I'm just right here in front of my computer. It's doing it again? Huh.
yeah, it keeps going in and out.
Hmm. Ooh. Let me get a little let me get a little closer then. Can you hear me now? Maybe if my hands in front of that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Wait a minute. Let me try something. Mm, maybe, just maybe. Maybe. Just maybe.
And I can't tell, like even I can't even. I've been watching you to see
Can you hear me now?
if it's a certain position that you move into, but
You can't hear
it
me.
just kind of
You can't hear
randomly
me.
goes in and out.
You can't hear me.
I hear you saying something, but I can't make out what you're saying.
Oh, you're there? You.
Okay, now
Can
I
you
can
hear me?
hear you.
Can you hear
No, barely.
me?
And is it just me, or is can anybody else comment? Can you guys hear or no? Well, no. Somebody says
What about now?
say
Can
something
you
else.
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Huh. Huh. But I can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah, I got the speaker in there with the microphone, but I can't hear you.
Okay, you're clear now.
No, I just turned the volume up. I went in and turned it up.
Okay.
Okay, what? Can you hear me clear now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So here, we're back at the lower picture on the left, and I was tracing those lines up. All of those are termite problems. Just one line here, one line here, another one here, and another one here. That's termite problems. And this little area right here to the right, that's actually the hearth of a fireplace. And what happened is on the outside, the chimney cap got blown off. So every time it rained, water was getting in, and it just created a home for termites. And they got in and they just ate up all of it. As a matter of fact, that wall, when that all came down, was just completely torn up. All the framing members were torn up. Here, so always get your home, make sure you have adequate pest control at your home. That could have been prevented if they went out there because the chimney cap was sitting in the garage, no, in the backyard. So had the homeowner got out there and just took care of it, we wouldn't have a problem. Here, this is termites because this was done because of poor drainage. So as a homeowner, when you go out there, and sometimes we extend our patios to give us more room for family and cookouts and everything, but the drainage was not good. It was drained. It had a negative slope where it was going towards the home. So every time it rained, the water sloped back towards the home. And this was the out on the other side of that wall was the exterior wall. This was in the garage, and part of that garage stayed flooded, and the other part right here where it didn't flood, but it was enough moisture where the termites could build a colony, and they did some damage in there, a lot, and that was just one of the areas out of about five of them that I took a picture of, but I wanted to keep that one because it was the biggest. Let's see. Huh, let's see. Energy rating. Energy rating reports. I wanted to talk about this because sometimes you can talk to the city too. They can get someone to come out. The energy rating report is a new program that gives the homeowner a custom energy breakdown of their home. The information provided also relates to the tax breaks, the rebates on some appliances, and energy saving maintenance tips for your home. You can go to this website at www.energy.gov. I think that's a great starting point where you go in and you get the understanding of some of the basics. And the thing is, you may not see all of the savings up front, but you start seeing them on the back end. I'll give you an example. I did some updates in my home, and once I made those changes, I started seeing my utility bills, mainly my AC bills, started going down. I started noticing where I was having to set my AC at 70. I no longer had to set it at 70. I was able to get away with it at 72 or 73. And because of general just basic maintenance, and taking care of those items, using different type of light fixtures, light bulbs in my home. Um, Reducing the number of appliances I had plugged in, and I had a lot. And we typically have a lot. One of the most common ones we have is phone chargers and clocks, and then our televisions, our gaming systems, a lot of that stuff. If you're not using it, unplug it. Just until plug it up when you're ready to use it. Or if there's a switch where you can turn it off, use the switch, turn it off. It makes a big difference. But look at that website, www.energy.gov. Let's see. This is something for any veterans. If you know of a veteran, and this is what we call a HISA program. And it's a federally funded program. It's a grant. It's a grant up to $6,500 for veterans who are in need of home improvements, like to the bathrooms, kitchens, driveways, and the ramps. And I put these in here. It will not cover new construction, walkways to exterior buildings, like you want a walkway to the she shed in the backyard or the workshop, and they won't cover that. It won't cover a spa, hot tub, or a decking. It won't cover that. But this is the website here. So I would get if you can, get a picture of that because it helps. And the reason why I always mention this program is because a lot of veterans don't know about it, and when they reach a certain age, they have to, make some modifications to their home, and that's one of them. That's one of the ways of getting it done. So again, if you decide to use this program or reach out to them, when you're dealing with federal dollars are different than neighborhood dollars. They gotta have everything lined up. So when they ask for documentation on, insurance for the contractor, information of contract, licenses, address, website, they want all that information, tax info, they want it all. So you're dealing with government dollars, that's something that you're going to contend with. But once you get the grant, you're in there. And if they have any questions, you can always go up to the VA hospital, the regional office. Someone at the regional office will be able to help you. So, in conclusion, with this, we talked about the roof, the attic, foundation, drainage, electrical, plumbing, and appliances. But I want to know, do we have any questions?
Yes, one just actually popped into the chat. Which direction should your AC register vent face? Towards the inside of the house or towards the window?
Which direction should the AC register vent face, towards the outside of the house or toward the window? Mine are facing that AC register. You don't want them facing the windows. Here's why. You're going to create a moisture problem with that air, especially if it's close to that window. You're going to create a condensation problem on that window. And even you don't want your registers too close to a light fixture, because I've seen where homeowners have gone in and removed the light fixture and put a high speed looking light fixture up there, but it was inches away from the air register. She kept wondering why condensation was falling on her kitchen floor. It was because the heat from the light and the cold air from the air register was creating condensation. It was dripping down on the floor. So as a matter of fact, open all your AC registers, even in the window, I mean, not windows, even in rooms you're not using. Keep them open, because that air, and if you close off that register, there's still air in that room, but it's warming up. Now the system has to run a little bit harder to cool down that air that heated up. You know what I mean?
How does one go about finding a good, reliable general contractor?
Oh, wow. I was, you know, I would start with Lowe's and Home Depot. I would start there because they did their what I call, they've done their homework on these people, the contractors they're going to use. So if Lowe's or Home Depot have their people in place, I would start there. Not necessarily saying I'm gonna go buy something from Lowe's or Home Depot, but they may give you those contractors. Um, Sometimes word of mouth, like your neighbor may have used the person and he did this work and the work he did was great. I would go there. Um, internet, but sometimes you got to trust. If I'm asking certain questions and I'm getting the runaround, they're not answering my questions, or if I'm asking them, then I'm probably not going to deal with it. That's just that tells me they're probably not who they say they are. Um, even believe it or not, go to some of the building sites where they're building homes. Contractors are out there all the time. They may have a contract to do plumbing for 30 houses out there, and then they'll say, okay, well, this is what I have here. So also, if that, like, say, a plumber, you can go ahead and, just say you can go to, I'm sorry, it's a plumber and you need a license. You know, you go to the state website. All the plumbers that are licensed are there. Hold on, I'm looking at this. I called my builder and they told me it should face the window so as to keep the heat out. You're gonna have a condensation problem sooner or later.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. You know, if you're cooling that window off, but you're gonna have a condensation problem there later because once that air starts hitting that window, that cold air hitting that hot window, it's gonna create a condensation problem.
Yeah,
That's
I noticed that from one of the houses that we had done here at the office that the builder had put the AC, the thing was on the, and when we walked into the room, we couldn't feel the air in the room. It was like on the window. So when we turned it around, then it's like, okay, then it made sense. It started cooling the room off because now it wasn't
Yeah,
blowing
I'll
at
tell you
the
something else
window
to
when
help
all
keep
the
a
heat
room
was.
cool too. Use curtains.
Huh?
I'll tell you something else that'll keep a room cool. Use curtains. Sometimes I've seen so many houses now, people don't use curtains anymore. So you're getting a lot of sunlight coming into that room. And then sometimes you'll have a room and where you should have had two air registers, you may have one. Sometimes you got to look at the actual diameter of the air ducts that you're using too. Older homes are harder to keep cool than newer homes that, you got to look at the size of the unit as the square footage of the home. Did it match up properly? Because sometimes, believe it or not, they don't match them up all the time. It's those little nuances that'll eat you up later. But as far
Right.
as tracing the window, what is it? JS, I would recommend try this. Switch it. Point them away from the window, and then get back with me on the next one. Tell me what happened.
Can I
And then
speak?
say, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. I bought my house in 2006. I had it built in this new subdivision, and it had been like that since the day I bought it. And I couldn't understand why my house was so hot. I I'm the only person living in it, and it was always hot. My neighbor, I looked at their electric meter, and mine was always running faster than theirs. And I have curtains that are like blackout curtains,
Mhm.
so it shouldn't have been an issue. And the only room in the house that had the vents turned the correct way, and it was only one, was in the kitchen. So I would be in the kitchen. I said, "Oh, it's kind of hot. Let me turn on the air." It would get so cool in the kitchen, but the other rooms wouldn't be. And so I finally, after 20 years, basically, somebody came in from the city who was doing the what is it, weatherization program,
Mhm. Weatherization
and
program.
they, yes, and one person said, "Hey, it's turned the wrong way." But when I tried to get them to turn it the other way, they wouldn't. I called the builder, and he said he sprouted the same thing. It's supposed to be facing the window. Why would I want to cool my window? So I'm now having to turn it the opposite way. But imagine how much money I've wasted because
Mhm.
somebody don't know what they're doing.
It happens, I just don't, when JS was telling me, JC was telling me, I said, well, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, well, why would you cool the window off? Because you're getting direct heat on that window. I'll tell you something else that'll probably happen to those windows too. I would look at your windows, look and see if you're starting to get that iridescent color in your windows.
I am. I think I am. I think I'm getting that issue. So that is my problem is that is it just frustrates me because I've been dealing with this for so long and I am the JC person. I'm the one who wrote the note saying this.
Okay,
And
okay.
yes. And so it's very frustrating to know after all this time you're trying to take care of your biggest investment or your biggest expense that you paid over the years and this is what you get. Somebody even at the builder is telling you wrong and other people are telling you wrong and other people are saying no, it should go toward toward the inside of the house.
Yeah, well,
But
there are times I go out to a house and I see the splash blocks facing the open end, facing the foundation, where she's supposed to have the open end of the splash blocks facing away from the foundation, because the builder is saying, "Oh well, it helps to water the foundation, it helps water the soil." Well, it doesn't make sense. Let it flow away from the soil because you're going to have intermitting spots around your home where you're going
That
to
are
have,
cooling water.
yeah, and
yeah,
I don't get it. I was like, well,
I
I
took
always
down the
write the
trays.
report, turn it out. Say again, man.
Mhm. I took down the registers and I
Mm-hmm.
was cleaning them. They were so dirty from that what you were talking about, condensation or whatever it is. It didn't make any sense. I can't. Yeah, I'm still
Mm-hmm.
dumbfounded.
Sorry to hear that. Really am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, hopefully it cools off now then for you better
Yeah.
than before. So, but
Thank
Well,
you.
keep us posted. Let us know
yeah, I
how
would love to
how it does
love to
do.
hear that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, you were talking about the AC units and matching the size of the house. We had somebody that had purchased a new AC unit or had gotten a unit replaced, and
Mhm.
they were told that they needed one particular size, and it ended up being that the size of the unit that they got was too large, and it was creating mold in the
North,
house
yeah.
because the moisture would build up and it was uh,
Mhm.
starting to create these little mold icons and stuff.
It'll start with almost like it's short cycling, but it runs so fast it rapidly cools the house down, and then the house starts to warm up quickly, and now you got that hot air and that cold air mixing, and now you got a moisture problem.
So
So
is there a formula of like the size of the house for the
yeah,
size of the
usually
unit or
usually
like how
one
do you
ton
know?
per 400 square feet.
I'm sorry, 1 ton per.
400 square feet. It's either 400 or 450. I got to look at it. Some of them vary, but it's like let's just say 450, 1 ton per 450 square feet.
Okay.
That's what you want. But before I would ever buy a new unit, I would make sure my home is sealed up properly before I buy a new unit. That way, when I do buy it, I'm not buying something an oversized unit to cool the house. You know what I mean? And
And
what basically what I'm saying is you're buying an oversized unit, meaning it's too big for the home, rapidly cooling a house that's a leaky house, a house that's not sealed up good. So I'll tell you, I don't know who talked this lady into it, but I was out there in Rocheron, older home. Someone talked the lady into buying a mid-sized chassis unit. A mid-sized chassis unit is something that you see on a commercial building, on like a strip center. Some of the AC
wow.
systems just sit up there, and I was like, wow. And I was shocked when I saw it. And she told me, oh yes, I had to turn it, I had to stop using it because my utility bill was so high. And I was, what are you doing with it in the first place? On a residential home, why do you have that? Somebody talked her into it. That's why I would say do your homework because you got some scoundrels out there. There's no way someone should talk her into buying a commercial unit for a house. It was, mind you, it was an older home. It was in a rural area. It was an older home. Still, that was like you shouldn't even done that.
Hmm.
And matter of fact, what I was out, that house had been in a fire. That's what I was out there for. And I often wondered if that AC unit had something to do with it. That was years ago when I saw that. Wow.
Okay. I want to also note that the all of the documents and things that Cliff was asking you guys to kind of take a picture of and to note. I've got all of those resources and the actual documents and things that are going to be sent out. I did put a copy of the seasonal maintenance in the chat that you guys can click to download, but otherwise I will be sending out a copy of that to you all as well. Make sure I got all the other questions. Um, let's see, I don't see anything else on social media. Uh, Great advice. Thanks for the information. This is definitely leading me to making better decisions and more informed decisions. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other questions or anything? While we've got our inspector here, our appraisal did have to leave, but she will be back. We're doing these sessions every other month now, so February, March. So we'll be back in April. She'll be back just in time to talk to you guys also about the protest season is going to start in April, where people are have the deadline. It's up to May 15th, I believe it is, to protest your property taxes. So if there are some renovations and updates or questions in regards to that, she will be able to cover those questions that you have as it relates to upgrades and things that may potentially increase your property tax values. So join us in April for that as well. Okay, I think that's it about it, Cliff. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. I know that I got you late for an inspection. You're on your way back out. So appreciate you kind of squeezing us in between time
Yeah,
to
I
get
just
this
pushed it back
information
for a
out.
little while. Again, I'm gonna say this to get out of here. That's because the contractors that were hired to come out to do the job, they dropped the ball. So now I have to go back out there to inspect what they have done and go from there.
Mm.
So little things make a big difference.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. All right. Well, we want to thank you guys for coming out this afternoon. What we got coming up for next week, we actually have our property tax and valuation
Mhm.
presentation next week with the appraisal district and the tax assessor collector's office. Property taxes were due as of the end of January. However, if you've come into some financial issues and you need to make payment arrangements and things, they'll be talking about that. And then also HOA foreclosures. So what happens when your HOA tries to attach a lien or to try to take your property or try to force you to foreclose? What your rights and things are and what that process is like is next Thursday. And if anyone that you guys know of that's interested in home ownership, we have our first time home buyer education class that's on the 28th next Saturday. We do offer those. Those are once a month. Those are also the HUD certified classes that allow you the opportunity to apply for various down payment assistance programs that are out there. So if you know if anybody's interested in home ownership, then have them give us a call and let us know. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we do our part in helping people with protecting their assets. We are hosting our one of our transfer on death deed clinics that's going to be on the first part is March the 11th and then March the 21st. I'll be sending out a flyer about that to you guys as well. And it's basically a simple document that can be filed with the county clerk's office that will help with transitioning the ownership from yourself to whoever it is that you choose to leave your property to without ever having to go through the probate process. This helps with a lot of title issues and things like that that people have when they pass away without a will or and just automatically assume that the property is supposed to transfer to the correct person and it doesn't just do that automatically and information like that is what's keeping a lot of people from losing that's making a lot of people lose their property or their heir property that their parents and grandparents and other relatives have had that should have rightfully gone to the people it's supposed to go to. So if you know of anybody that needs to get assistance with getting a transfer on death deed filed and notarized, we are doing that. It's going to be a no charge for those that income qualified for us to cover the filing fees, but we will have attorneys there to review the document and on-site filing as well. So we're going to have that available for you on March the 11th and March 21st. So just go to our website to register for that, but I will be sending out the information about that as well. So if we don't currently have any offer any workshops that you guys might be interested in or need more information about, please reach out to us and let us know, or fill out the brief survey that we have that's going to be popping up on your screen, because we want, again, to want to try to get as much correct information out to the community as we possibly can. So if there's something that's, impacting your community, that's impacting your family, that you need more information about or want to get more clarity about, then please let us know. Then we can see what we can do about hosting that. So with that being said, thank y'all again very much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you being here. Hope to see y'all next time. You all take care of yourselves and stay safe, and see you soon. Thanks again, Cliff.